Welcome, everybody. I'm Joe Danishevsky, Joe D, President of the Democrats Greater Tucson. So glad you came. Always with Sam Almy. We're going to have a great program today. He's a data analyst with Uplift Data. He'll present on how and why Arizona voters turned out widely misreported red wave into a blue tide that gave us many of the most important statewide offices, including retaining and expanding our majority in the U.S. Senate. Sam will give insights into who turned out, who didn't, who crossed the aisle, and who didn't. Sam, take her away.
All right, great. Right down to business. I like that there. Let me go ahead and set up the screen sharing here. I just have a few slides. I probably won't be taking too much time here, but I do want to go over, what happened in Pima County and kind of give it a little bit of a statewide angle. And then I think, a lot of people will cover the top races, the U.S. Senate, the governor, and things like that. But I'm also going to probably take a look at the single shot races for the state house. There's a missed opportunity, I think, in one of our legislative districts where the Republicans were able to get an extra person in that, had that both seats gone Democratic, we would have had a tied Arizona House. Yeah. I think there's opportunities in Pima County specifically for 2024, and I'll go over this as well here. I'll go ahead and recap this election a little bit for you all. Here's my intro slide. I know I came to DGT recently, so this is probably old hand for a lot of you. I used to be the voter file manager for the Arizona Democratic Party. Now I work with Uplift campaigns. We do a lot of digital advertising. We work with all sorts of progressive candidates up and down the ballot, congressional to school board. We did a number of races statewide. We helped a little bit on Chris Mays' race, a little bit on Fontez's race. We also worked on Kathy Hoffman's race this year for our statewide. We were working with Kristen Engel to do her digital stuff with a number of other legislative candidates around Arizona here. But we also do national stuff. So we're sort of all over the place at Uplift. I track early voting data for Arizona. I'll talk a little bit about those trends a little bit later. And I try to keep everything in some cool charts and graphs so it can be a little bit understandable for everybody. And you can kind of get a sense of perspective and understand what's likely to happen going forward. So let's start with statewide turnout. We don't have full partisan turnout numbers for statewide yet. I do have it for Pima County. I got that last week. In Maricopa County, Pima County, it was a little bit down. We'll talk about that. Maricopa County was down, but not as dramatically as Pima County. But again, you have your typical map here. Here's the whole statewide. Everybody here knows this doesn't tell the full picture because these big giant precincts here, there's nobody living in these precincts. It's like looking at the big electoral map for the states. Like, sure, it looks all red, but there's nobody there. A lot of dark blue areas on the Navajo and Hopi nations. That was actually kind of one of the areas in the state that increased in turnout. That was kind of neat to see. And then down here, of course, you got the Tohono O'odham Nation in dark blue, Cochise County all red. But as everybody on this call knows, the action is happening in these filled in, hard to see precincts here in Maricopa County. And then down here in Tucson. And I'll zoom in on those areas here shortly. Something neat to see here is that this top of the ticket performance, so we've got a kind of a combination of U.S. Senate, governor, president. This has been trending Democratic. 2010 was a bit of an anomaly for Democrats. I think we had Rodney Glassman versus John McCain in that race. So you can see why that went poorly for the Democrats that year. This blue trend line, this is something we like to see statewide. It is just barely above 50%. This is what a lot of people have been talking about in the early 2010s as Arizona is about to flip blue, and it did. You could see this happening. Mark Kelly got 51% of the vote. We still have a registration gap against Republicans. Republicans, I think, are the majority party right now. They sort of flip back and forth between independents. Right now, they have 165,000 voter advantage over Democrats. But this gap is closing a little bit. Independents certainly will lean Democratic, but oftentimes, and I'll show this in a few other slides, they don't vote in large enough numbers to overcome this strong registration. And something that I'm telling when I do this little slideshow is the question I'm always asking, and I don't have an answer for this, are these current results that we're seeing in Arizona that started a little bit after 2016, is this a result of Donald Trump? Certainly a polarizing figure. None of the candidates he has endorsed in Arizona have won. That's something very important to note. Well, at least not in a competitive district, I'm certain. The non-competitive districts, they have won. But when it comes to a Blake Masters or a Kerry Lake, they are not winning statewide. And we as Democrats have to appreciate that, but at the same time realize that if they run a moderate, just generally boring conservative candidate, are the Democrats going to lose because of that? There certainly still is this large registration advantage for Republicans. So in 2024, we do have to be mindful of that. So the next two maps I'm going to show you, I'm going to flip back and forth between them here. This is the first map I'm going to show you all is Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney. This is Pima County precincts breakdown. And then map 2 is going to be Mark Kelly versus Blake Masters. And see if you can see where the shift is happening within the county. So first up, here's our blue precincts. This is where Barack Obama won. Red precincts, this is Mitt Romney. We're going to go ahead and flip ahead 10 years. And there's the difference right there. This blue area, this is all Mark Kelly precincts. This red area, we're seeing this growth outward from the core of, the urban core of Tucson. We're seeing that growth happen. Again, 1 and 2. And you can even see down here in Sal Rita and Green Valley, these precincts turned blue. They went for Mark Kelly. I didn't think I'd ever see Sal Rita go blue, let alone Green Valley. So this is really encouraging to see. But again, we have to make sure that we keep these gains going forward. Here are the two maps side by side here. And then, earlier we had a top of the ticket performance statewide. This here is for Pima County here. And again, Pima County has just become increasingly Democratic. I think with Maricopa trending the way that it is, it's a very split county right now. Certainly the majority of population, a vast majority of population is in Maricopa County. But with that split that we have in Maricopa County, Pima County really pushes it across for Democrats. Having 62% of the vote for Mark Kelly, that's huge. That ensures that strong turnout in Yavapai and Mojave County, that kind of goes away with this hearing. From 2018 to 2022, 89 precincts flipped from Doug Ducey to Katie Hobbs. A lot of those were in LD 17. I think LD 17 towards the north here, and then LD 18. In LD 18, every one of these precincts went for Mark Kelly. That is not something we've seen in previous elections, and that's a great trend to see. No precincts went from David Garcia to Kerry Lake, meaning it was all Democratic gains in Pima County. So let's take a look at some more trends for Pima County here. Again, always a Democratic, heavily registered county. Here's 2018 versus 2022. About 40% of registered voters in Pima County are registered Democratic. Republicans are actually the smallest party here at under 30%, closer to 28%, and then independents at 3%. What happens though, and this isn't a Pima County problem, this is a statewide problem for independents, is that they simply don't vote. Here in 2020, they made up 33% of registered voters, but only 25% of those people have turned out and voted. That kind of hinders a lot of Democratic candidates simply because a lot of independents will vote Democratic, but we're not turning them out. And it's a tricky battle for us every cycle. Something nice to see here is this turnout trend. And you can see this blue Democratic line getting right on top of the Republican line. In previous years, there's been a little bit of a gap there. And that's really hurt us in statewide elections. You can see in 2018, this is where it basically evens up. Republicans and Democrats are turning out at the same rates. We're seeing that trend happen a lot statewide, and especially in a lot of our competitive legislative and congressional districts. Turnout was down from 2018. I will say there was a weird reporting thing from the Pima County elections. They did something where in 2018, they said, here's the total number of registered voters, registered active voters. This year, they reported active plus inactive voters, which is a little unusual. I've never seen that happen. Pima and Pinal did that. So if you look at Pima County's numbers, turnout was actually down like 13%. But if you look at the Secretary of State's numbers, turnout was down 7% in Pima County. So depending on which numbers you look at, and neither is wrong, turnout could have been down a lot larger compared to. For a lot of this presentation here, I'm just going to be looking at the active voters, just because that's all I have for previous years. Yeah. All right, let's talk about why Pima County turnout was so far down. And I'm going to give credit to my colleague Adam Kinsey for asking me this question. He said, was it because the DCCC wasn't involved in a race? And I think that probably played a large part. This was the first time since 2004 that DTRIP hadn't played a role in Pima County. Since 2006, they've always had, Gabrielle Giffords district, the Ron Barber district, Martha McSally's district. That has always been a very competitive district for Pima County. Even in the north part of the district, you had Tom O'Halloran. So having that national money, that organizing, the push for early voting, I think that really affected how turnout happened, because you can see over in AZ07 and Grijalva's district, overall turnout was down about 2.5%. That's very much on par with what the state was. I think the state was down exactly that amount. Democratic turnout was down a little bit in this district. Republican turnout was down a little bit less. But when you jump over to AZ06, turnout's down almost 10% as compared to 2018. And that's a pretty huge drop. I wasn't expecting that, but I think a lot of this has to do with lack of attention from some of the larger groups. But you could also think about the local groups also play a part in this. So I certainly think that the DTRIP, looking at Juan Ciscomani's margin of victory, that race is certainly going to be on their map in 2024. For the ADLCC and the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, I think LD 17 might be on that radar as well, because Mark Kelly, Katie Hobbs, and Adrian Fontes all won the LD 17 precincts. And this does, Lori, this does include this 9.8% drop. This is all voters. And then if we break it out by party, this is what it looks like. Independents in Arizona 06 had a 13% drop in turnout as compared to it. Something else that you can see, I put in this little map here, the dark orange. This is the lowest, this is the largest drop in turnout. You can see most of the turnout increases is over here in the western part of the county on the Tohono O'odham Nation. But it's not really any what concentrated in one particular area. It's all just various shades of this orange here. So it's not one area, but it is certainly more prevalent in the ASIO6 area. All right. Next, let's talk about single shots here, and then I'm going to open it up for questions here, and I can talk about anything you all want. So this is where we're going to go back to the statewide view here. These are the single shot LDs. We have 2, 4, 13, 16, 17, 23, 27. 17 and 23 are in Pima County. The rest, 16 is, well, it's your neighbor in Pinal, but the rest are up in Maricopa County. But what you see here is this is top of the ticket races here. All of these legislative districts are trending Democratic. So for instance, LD 17 here, this crossed the 50% threshold for Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly won this district. That's really important. The other district I want to talk about is LD 23, which is a small portion of Pima County. It's the western part. But this district also includes South Yuma County and portions of Maricopa County. This district is consistently at 55% Democratic performance. But if you look over here on our dots, our State House 2 candidate got close to 47% of it. That's a huge drop off from all these other dots here. Mark Kelly is up here at close to 57%. This is a missed opportunity. There needs to be some vote for 2 language happening in LD 23. This also happened when it was LD 4. The Republicans got in Joel John. You know, that's a problem that I don't have great answers to, but it is going to take some work. LD 13, this is up in Maricopa County. It's in the Chandler area. This district, we have 1 State House candidate in there. My personal opinion is it's ready for 2 State House candidates. I think the current Republican senator there, he's an incumbent. He's fairly well known, so it's hard to knock that out, especially with a down ballot race. But they could be ready for 2 House candidates there to pick up, a majority in the State House. LD 17, this race I think could definitely benefit from a single shot State House candidate. I was at their LD meeting the other day, and the top vote getter in that district was Justine Wadsack, the state senator. And I find that very bizarre because they were rejecting all the other Trump candidates like Carrie Lake and Blake Masters. But they said, oh, well, this person we haven't heard about, Justine Wadsack, down ballot candidate, we can vote for that. Everybody here knows on this call knows that Justine is just out to lunch as the rest of them. So, you know, this could be a state Senate pickup. I definitely think a state House pickup with the increased resources from both the national, county, and state party. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions. I have a little bit shorter speech today. Feeling a little clogged up, if you couldn't tell, but I'm going to open it up for questions.
Okay, we have a question from Maria Jensen. Maria, unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's Mari, A like Mars. Sam, I was interested in hearing about the overlap between the districts that ADLCC targeted versus the ones you've identified as being ready for possibly getting another Democrat in those districts. I can't remember, because ADLCC had targeted some particular districts as being flippable, and you've identified some others you think are flippable for the future. What's the overlap on those?
Sure. So I just want to first preface this with I have the benefit of foresight. I know what happened.
You had hindsight. Yeah.
Hindsight. That's what I mean. Hindsight. So, you know, and I say this for all Democratic campaigns, not just the ADLCC, you know, up and down the ballot. If we think back to this time last year in 2022, it was going to be a pretty rough year for Democrats. We were not, we were expecting a fairly large red wave. We were not expecting Roe v. Wade to be overturned. It was just going to be kind of a down year for us. I will be honest, I had Kerry Lake winning throughout last year. I am shocked and pleased that Katie Hobbs won. So, to get back to your question, when the ADLCC looks at these districts now, they now know what these districts look like. They're going to see the results in LD 17 and say, I think we can make some pickups there. When they were looking originally at their districts, they were looking at a lot in Maricopa County. They were protecting some of their incumbents. They were looking for a few pickups in northern Maricopa County. And as the math suggested in early 2022, that was probably about the best they were going to do. Now looking at actual results and what a presidential year means with higher Democratic and independent turnout, I think this map's really going to expand. They're looking at the same numbers I am.
Okay,
All right,
Paul Stapleton Smith.
Thanks, Mari.
Thank you, and thank you, Mari and Sam. You're an amazing guy. We've said that to you. We're grateful you're here. Regarding you suggested a single shot strategy in LD 17, and I want to ask you, my friend, to demystify the single shot strategy. It's not black magic. It's still guessing on a horse race. And would you please explain why single shot would be pulled out as a strategy, letting Trumpster incumbents run unopposed? They cakewalk into that election, if I may.
Yeah. So the single shot. It's political theory. I think it works in some districts, and it doesn't work in other districts. It comes down to a couple things. You look at the voter registration in the district. So LD 17, it's a Republican district. For some reason, the Republicans jumped ship on the high top of the ballot Trumpster Republicans, the Kerry Lakes and the Blake Masters, the Mark Finchams. They jumped ship on those. But what I think happened is our LD 17 candidates, and I just want to preface this with, I'm not blaming anybody. Our candidates are excellent. Our candidates weren't able to get out the message that a Justine Wadsack or some of the state house candidates were also allied with Trump as loudly as Mark Kelly could. Mark Kelly has enough money to buy a TV station. We had candidates running clean. They can run one or two mailers, and they can't, there's some rules on coordination with the state party. So when you're looking at candidate recruitment, if you have one outstanding stellar candidate, you want to run them for the House, then you want to run one for the state Senate, then two in the House. Generally, how I look at it is, if your state House candidate is consistently finishing number one, then it's time to start thinking about that second state House. That's my personal strategy. It may differ at the ADLCC. They look at this every single day, so they're also making great decisions.
Okay, great. We have a question from George Beverly. George, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thanks, Sam. So I'm in that LD 23 kind of situation, and I learned my LD is kind of tricky. So my question is, do you have a breakdown of the ethnic voting besides the Native Americans within that LD? Because I would like to start recruiting and grooming new candidates for that district.
I don't yet. I know I have Maricopa County and Pima County data, but I don't have that in a great format to break down that ethnicity. But George, you have my email. I would love to look at this. I think it's really important. I know having a lot of South Yuma County in the West Valley of Maricopa, it's a strong Hispanic population. So I know that's important to the district. I'm also curious. Let me know.
Okay. Michael Bryan, we have some questions in the chat room by chance, and
Very interesting. Let's go with Tim Sultan first. He wants you to look forward a little bit and give your opinions about the 2024 showdown in the Senate between Gallega Cinema and possibly Kerry Lake.
Yeah, sure. That's going to be a wild ride. This is my personal opinion. I haven't looked into it. I think it's really going to come down to, are you going to get a Republican that's it's going to be very tricky if all three candidates run. Rubin is certainly a progressive. He's going to alienate a lot of the moderate conservatives, the moderate Republicans. A Trumpster Republican is going to do the same. So, will an independent Kirsten Sinema be able to kind of split the difference between those two, and kind of win with something like 30% of the vote? That's the question to be asked. The other thing is, I think, let's see, there's two states with an independent senator, Vermont and Maine, I think. I know in Maine, the Democrats, they're fine with Angus King, so they won't run a candidate. If a Kirsten Sinema wins, is she going to uncaucus with the Democrats because of animosities between the parties? That's another thing to think about. My curiosity right now, Rubin is my representative in Congress. I am very curious as to see who runs for Rubin's seat. Follow just kind of like the cascade waterfall effect from everybody kind of shuffling up, so to speak. I'm very curious to see how that works out. So,
do you have any insight into early possibilities for running for Rubin's seat?
Oh my goodness, we've got, off the top of my head, probably Laura Pastor, Steve Gallardo. I'm sure Raquel Tehran will probably think about it. And those are three that I can think of right now. I mean, you might even have like a Reggie Boldy think about it. I had Adrian Fontes not won. I think he would have thrown his hat in. So, that's what we're looking at.
Right. Some people are not clear about the single shot, what that means. Can you explain what that means and what the strategy entails?
Oh, sure. So a single shot strategy. This is so in the state house, there's 2 seats, so you get 2 votes, and essentially you run one candidate. And the theory is that if the Democrat shows up to vote, they'll vote for the Democrat and throw away their other vote. So now you have the Democratic candidate leading 1-0 to 0. The Republican candidate shows up, or the Republican voter shows up, they vote for both Republicans. So now it's tied 1-1-1. And the theory is that you'll get enough independents or Republican crossovers that will say, well, I'm going to split my ticket and say, so you'll have the independent voters show up and they say, I'm going to vote for 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. So now it's 2-1 is this with those 3 voters. So now your Democratic candidate is essentially winning, and you'll hope that happens enough times where the Democrat can get ahead. Carolyn, I see your comment in chat. What about the single shot Dem in LD16? I love that a Democrat won in that race. I was very surprised to see Seth, or was it Seth or
Heath Seaman, I think his name is.
Yeah, Keith. There we go. Win second place. I think that is great. I know. I saw. I think it was Henry Wade election night, and I was kind of like, he's from Maricopa, the city of Maricopa, and I was like, what? Why aren't you on the ballot? So I think this kind of result will encourage candidates, Democratic candidates in that district to run for either the House or the Senate. The Senate might be a little trickier because they do have TJ Shope. He's an incumbent. He's fairly well liked. He's not too radical, but being the incumbent helps.
Yeah. So essentially, the single shot strategy hinges upon split ticket voters.
Yes.
We get more of them than they get, basically.
Right. Because we're forcing that.
Right. John Yoakum wants to know, how did Pima County turnout compare with other outlying counties other than Maricopa?
Pima County turnout was the lowest drop in turnout. They were down about 7% statewide. Most other counties were down 2 to 4%. I think only Apache and Navajo County had increases in turnout. And I think a lot of that was due to the Navajo and Hopi Nation areas of the state. I know the Navajo, they had a pretty contested presidential election that really helped.
Yeah.
Turnout there.
So your main theory is that Pima County was dragging its feet because the D-Trip didn't play.
Yeah, that's my working theory right now. But again, what is the D-Trip going to do that the Senate committee isn't? So.
Except they got to focus on the whole state as opposed to.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that's all
Carolyn
the questions that are pending out there. Let's move on to Carolyn.
Susie, you have a question.
Did not voting down ballot races affect the Arizona 06 or any of the others in this election? So if we didn't fill out our ballots all the way down, what kind of an effect did that have on your numbers?
Well, down ballot race doesn't have an drop off, doesn't have an effect on turnout because one ballot you turn out no matter how complete that ballot is. But down ballot drop off, I think, really affected some of our statewide candidates, particularly Kathy Hoffman. I think she suffered from that a little bit, and some of our corporation commission candidates. If you look at the totals for the Republican Corporation Commission candidates, they are just about even with the total number of votes. But between Sandra Kennedy and Lauren Kuby, there's a pretty big difference between the two vote totals there. So that tells me, a lot of the Democrats and people voting Democratic don't know about vote for two language, which, it's different than in the majority of races.
Okay, well, Barry, I think I saw you manually raising your hand.
Yes,
You have a question?
yes, let's go back to the potential Senate race. I'm wondering about the turnout in Congressman Grijalva's district and Congressman Gallego's district, and how a candidacy statewide for Senate by Congressman Grijalva might affect the turnout on those districts.
This again is my personal opinion, but if Raul Grijalva threw his hat into the ring, I don't think that's going to energize voters instantly. Same thing for Ruben Gallego. Same thing for any district really. Voter turnout has a lot more to do with like socioeconomic factors than who's running. Certainly, who's running can motivate and energize a lot of different people. I think we saw that with Donald Trump. A lot of rural voters started coming out that didn't typically vote before, and that pushed it to Trump in 2016. But when you cut to, just because your congressman is running for Senate, it doesn't. I don't think that influences your voter behavior. So, that's an interesting question, but I don't think it would have a huge effect on turnout. That being said, these candidates will know where their base is and where they're most well known. So certainly they could focus their own campaigns on their district with that additional monies.
Yeah. It would be my hope that the Gallego support would not come necessarily because he is the congressman from that district, but because the districts which are underrepresented in how, in their voting percentage, tend to be largely Hispanic, and that perhaps a Hispanic candidate would help to correct that from our point of view.
No, absolutely. Representation matters. This is, and certainly if you don't feel represented when you go vote, why vote? So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Lori Cinnamon, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Sam. Nice to see you. We meet every 2 years. Going back to the turnout from Pima County, it's down. It was down compared to 2018. I wondered if you had any information, since it's a comparison to 2018, does that decline have anything to do with the, yes. What was the increase in 2018? So if it went up a whole bunch, if the bar was raised, I'm just asking, was the bar raised in 2018 so high that that means that in 2022 it was compared to 2018?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Lori. That's a good point. 2018 was a record high turnout year. And I dug up this tweet that I have here of this is the turnout shift county by county for each year from 2018 to 2012. 2018 was a record high turnout year for the state. You can see here Maricopa County, they dropped in turnout just 0.3%. In all these other counties, Coconino, Yuma, Mojave County, they dropped about 6%. And then Pima County was the biggest drop of all at 7.5%. So certainly a high bar was set in 2018. And you see almost every county here drops in turnout, but Pima County did drop.
Right. It would be interesting to see the increase in 2018. So like Coconino, they probably had a big increase in 2018 and Pima did as well. So
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Can you send me an email and I'll send that over to you?
Thank you so much.
Okay, Carolyn Klassen, you have a question.
I was really surprised that Kirsten Engel lost in CD6, being as she was the state senator and state house representative, and Juan Ciscomani was more or less unknown. So how do you explain what happened?
Well, I think a lot of that is that for the most part, Juan is a Republican. There are more Republicans in that district. Graham, Greenlee County was added. They took out the Democratic parts of Cochise County, and they also added in some more Pinal County. So the district itself changed more Republican friendly. And, it's difficult to call somebody a moderate Republican in this crowd. But, Juan Ciscomani is probably on the more moderate side, not on the Paul Gosar side of things when it comes to image. So my theory is that Arizona Republicans are fine voting for a Republican so long as they aren't wildly crazy. So I think that was probably part of it. In addition to that, there was no D-trip spending. There was nothing broadcasting Juan Ciscomani's position on choice from the national group. It was just sort of the Engel campaign out there, and that's about it. So in 2024, they've got even smarter people than me at the D-trip. So they're gonna this race is gonna be on their radar as well.
Okay, Mike, do we have any other questions in the chat room?
Not right now, but I have a question of my own. Looks like oh, hold on. Ciscomani also got an extra $3 million in outside independent expenditures, says Tim Sultan. So yeah, that probably played a factor as well. There was a lot of dark money floating around there. My question is, Sam, what do you see in youth turnout and youth registration that portends, good or ill for Democrats in years going forward, 24, 26, 28?
That's an interesting question. I am actually very curious to to jump into the age turnout. I know during early voting, I think over half of the electorate was aged 55 plus. That always drops on election day, just because a lot of younger voters will either drop off their ballot at the polls or vote in person. But without seeing that yet, I am curious. I know, with social media and everything, I do think that younger people are becoming more engaged. We have to continue to make voting easier. Something that you all did down there was vote centers. This didn't start in Maricopa County. This started in like Yavapai County, vote centers. And this was back, I think. Vote centers help out a lot. So if you are registered at your folks' house and you're living in an apartment across town, great. You can vote at any polling location.
Yeah,
That's what we want to see. We want to encourage that, get that information out. Other things like same-day registration, I think that's a long way off in Arizona, but that would definitely help voter turnout.
Yeah. Oh, Carolyn notes, will Kate Gallego be mayor of Phoenix help her former husband, Congressman Ruben Gallego, or not? My question is, will Kate run for the seat against him?
Right. I have no comment on that one. I have no idea. Kate's a friend. She's a client. I don't know what her plans are. We haven't chatted.
Fair enough.
Okay. Let's see. Mari, you have a question.
In terms of commenting about the down ballot races for Corporation Commission and Kathy Hoffman's race, the Democratic candidates, they all ran clean elections.
Yeah.
And I really want to know, Sam, do you think that hurt them in their races? Because it certainly keeps them from raising as much money as they might have. Or it seems to me it might have kept them from raising as much money as they might have.
Yeah, clean elections is kind of in a weird place. I think a lot of candidates are becoming hindered by it just because of how much money exists in politics. But then again, for a statewide candidate, could Kathy Hoffman have spent? Could she have raised more money and also been able to campaign by not running clean? I think a lot of Corporation Commission candidates run clean just because of the nature of the office. It's pretty unheard of. But
did their opponents run clean?
The Republican.
I think the Republican Corpcom ones did. I did not check Tom Horn. I try to avoid searching for him in general.
Okay,
But,
I don't think Tom Horn ran clean.
Yeah, well, surprise there. Yeah, but I think they kind of were affected by being further down the ballot, and then their issue wasn't sort of at the forefront of what was being talked about in the news. We hear about education all the time, but what kind of created a news vacuum here was Kari Lake versus Katie Hobbs. It dominated the news cycles. We didn't hear about school choice or anything else like that as much as we did in 2018.
When I was canvassing, I couldn't reliably get things to give to voters on the Corporation Commission candidates and on Kathy Hoffman. So my ability to hand out literature on them was limited. So I'm just wondering about the money issue.
Yeah. Well, their ability to coordinate when they're running clean is also limited.
Okay, great questions. Lori, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. This is going back to the Kirsten Engel race. So I heard that one of the reasons DCCC maybe didn't invest is because it was an R+, I can't remember, 7 district. Yeah. And help me, remind me that calculation, well, before I get to the question, she lost by 1.5% of the vote. She didn't lose by 7%. Mm-hmm. She lost by 1.5%. Okay, so that +7, let's just say it is +7 or +7. Isn't that determined on the 2018 governor's race, which was Garcia versus Ducey. Is that, remind me how that plus or minus is calculated?
I am not sure on how that is calculated. I bet if you looked at past election results for this, you'd find that the Republicans were probably performing about 7% better than the Democrats,
Well, it's just registration numbers,
like
right?
a 53, 54% margin.
Yeah.
So seeing Kirsten Engel do so well changes the calculus next year for the D trip.
Mhm. And Biden won that district.
But I thought that the IRC itself had a formula to determine the leaning of the district.
Oh,
And that-
I'm sure they do.
And that,
I mean, the IRC will put out their numbers, and I think other agencies kind of like look at that, and do their own math. But again, at the beginning of 2022, you don't really see it. It didn't look great for Democrats. Follow that up with the D trip didn't know who their candidate was going to be until August. It's really tricky to get that large organization turned around so quickly.
So the primary hurt.
Okay, looks like Jeannie, Christie, we have a question.
Yeah, Sam, what do you think of Greg Stanton versus Ruben Gallego?
Stan bowed out. He's very smart.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, he that was like a few days ago.
Uh-huh.
But I know that Stanton did some polling, and I know it was favorable in the general, but I don't know how favorable it was in the primary election. So he may have just made some personal calculations. But I think that would have been an interesting race for a primary, because you have a very strong, outspoken progressive in Ruben, and then you have an electable, moderate, popular mayor of Phoenix in Greg Stanton. So two good, strong candidates. That would have been kind of an interesting little battle for which way the Democratic Party in Arizona wanted to go.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay. Well, any other questions, Mike, in the chat room?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Good to go? Well, Sam, this is a pleasure to have you twice in the last couple of months. And you brought even more information today. Of course, the results are a little bit more conclusive. Thanks for putting the time in. Thanks for being with us. And we really salute you. So see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
With Batman, Garrett Archer.